Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. I'm your host, Dave Markel, coming to you from the Long Valley studio here in Washington, Utah. This is episode 171, and today's episode is going to be what I'll call a pause episode. There's no guest with me, there's no interview, and there's no big production around this one. It's just me talking directly to you. I wanted to show up today anyway, not because I felt perfectly prepared or energized or polished, but because this show has always been about honesty and about meeting people where they are, including myself. I've spent a lot of time over the years sitting across from victims and survivors, listening, holding space, bearing witness, and week after week, I ask people to step into very heavy territory with courage and openness. What doesn't always get talked about is that holding that space consistently, responsibly, carries weight. And today I'm feeling that weight. Instead of forcing myself through an episode that would feel rushed or hollow, I decided to do something different. I decided to talk to you, not at you. If you're a survivor listening right now, or a victim who's still in the horrible trap of wanting to leave an abusive relationship but not feeling safe enough to do that yet, I want to say this first. I'm really glad you're here. I don't take your presence lightly. I know that even listening to a podcast like this can sometimes stir things up, memories, feelings, questions. If that's happening for you right now, you're not doing anything wrong. That's just your nervous system responding to material that matters. One of the things I've learned over decades of doing this work is that healing doesn't happen on a schedule, nor does escaping. Neither move in a straight line, and neither responds well to pressure, especially self-pressure. That applies to both victims and survivors, and it applies to the people who walk alongside them. And today, this episode is about me and where I'm at this week. There's a cultural myth out there, especially in advocacy and justice work, that strength means pushing through no matter what. That if you pause or slow down or acknowledge fatigue, you're somehow failing the mission. I don't believe that, and I've never believed that. Real strength looks like discernment. It looks like knowing when to speak and when to listen. And sometimes it looks like choosing honesty over performance. This podcast exists for a reason. It exists because silence has protected harm for far too long, because victims and survivors have been disbelieved, minimized, or forced to tell their stories in ways that weren't safe or humane. SAS was created to be a different kind of space, one where stories are shared on the victims' or survivors' terms, and where trauma is understood, not judged. That mission hasn't changed, but the work is still heavy. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you've heard some incredibly powerful conversations. You've heard courage, you've heard grief, you've heard resilience that doesn't come wrapped in neat conclusions. Those conversations matter. They change people, and they also take something out of everyone involved, including me. I want to say this clearly, especially for the victims and survivors listening. You do not owe the world your story. You do not owe healing to anyone on a timeline. And you're allowed to rest. Rest is not quitting. Rest is not avoidance. Rest is regulation. One of the most damaging things trauma does is convince people they have to stay on high alert forever, that slowing down is dangerous, that if they stop moving, something bad will catch up with them. The truth is, safety is often found in learning when and how to pause. As I said earlier, today's episode is a pause. It's also a New Year's reminder that this show isn't going anywhere. I'm still here. SAS is still here. The conversations will continue. There are recorded episodes coming. There are voices you'll hear soon that deserve your full attention, and I want to give them that, rather than rushing to meet a deadline at the cost of quality and care. If you're someone who's ever thought, I should be doing better by now, or I shouldn't still feel this way. I want you to hear this from me. There's no should in trauma recovery. There's only what is. And what is today for me is the need to slow down just enough to stay grounded in why this work matters in the first place. If you're listening as a professional, an investigator, advocate, clinician, or educator, this applies to you too. Secondary trauma is real. Burnout is real. And pretending otherwise doesn't make you more effective. It just makes the impact sneak up on you later. Showing up responsibly sometimes means knowing when not to push. I also want to thank you, genuinely, for staying with this show, for listening, for sharing episodes, for trusting me and my guests with your time and your attention. That trust matters to me more than hitting a release schedule at all costs. The next episode you hear will return to our usual format, a survivor's story shared with courage and care. Today is simply a reminder that behind the microphone is a human being who takes this responsibility seriously enough to know when to step back and breathe. If you're struggling today, please be gentle with yourself. If listening stirred something up, consider doing something grounding after this. A walk, a glass of water, listening to some music, and definitely a few slow breaths. And if you need some support beyond what a podcast can offer, please reach out to someone you trust or a professional resource in your area. You don't have to carry this alone. Thank you all for giving me the space to show up honestly this week and every week. Thank you for being here. And thank you for continuing to make sexual assault survivor stories a place where truth is honored and victims and survivors are respected. Remember these two messages that will always be there. Start by believing, and do all you can to help normalize the conversation about rape and sexual assault. Because we all know someone whose life has been impacted by rape or sexual assault. We'll see you next week.